So, what's this story really all about? So, the story begins with a naked man, and I think all of us have had experience where someone disrupts the norm and somebody does something just really stupid and inappropriate, and we just know something's not working right to somebody here. And this story begins just after Jesus and his friends have arrived from being on the boat in a storm at sea. It took me back to seeing something strange back in our first trip to Ireland when a group of little kids came up to us hoping, I guess, that we give them a handout. They were the Tinker's kids, but one of them, you could tell, he was a little bit different. We today would say he's a special needs child, I think. He was sort of, kind of coming by and touching us and looking funny, and well, you could just tell something wasn't quite right. He was different, and I'll never forget the older child there. I think it was an older brother. I don't know, maybe a sibling, I assumed. And together the kids said, "Don't worry about him. He has a demon." And of course, I realized that in that context, what they described was mental illness. And he was saying, "I'm not sure what you think, but he can't help himself. You know, can you imagine others of us think a lot that way about somebody? And it sure sounds like maybe that little boy had serious mental illness going on. But however we interpret it, it's interesting how the idea of demons works in a similar way to the idea of mental illness, because when a person has a mental illness, or like this little boy who said about his brother, it's really not his fault. He's not behaving this way on purpose. This is not his choice. What's happening here is some force that has overtaken something in him. He's not behaving the way he wants to. Don't hold it against him. It was a way of letting us off the hook and maybe calling us to be a little bit more compassionate and understanding of how this child was. So I think this naked man running around in the cemetery, the graveyard, he's there with the tombs. He's kind of an embarrassment. And Jesus comes up to them after hearing, "What do you have to do with me, Son of the Most High God?" Interestingly, it's important for us to remember that in the ancient world, the idea of gods, many gods, was normative. It was kind of a bureaucracy of gods. And this guy realizes that in the bureaucracy of God, you're kind of there at the top. You're connected to the very top God. And so Jesus begins interacting with the man with the goal of, setting him free from the forces that are controlling him. So he's not behaving. He's not being his true self. He's being possessed and controlled, to behave worse than he normally would. And so he says, "What's your name?" And he answers, "Legion," because there were many of them inhibiting him at that time. So many evils inhabiting him. That word legion is a military term. It's like saying the man is a troop or a battalion. And the word choice has made people suspect that the meaning of the story is a reflection not just on the one man, but on the entire society around this village by the sea. Because you see, the Jewish people, the people of Jesus' day, had been occupied by the Romans. Their land had become possessed by the Romans. The Romans had come in, and as invaders, they were controlling everybody, and everybody was not acting at their best under the stress of their oppression by these Romans. People were behaving badly. It was as if their clothes had been ripped off, and the darkest parts of them was the most vulnerable parts was all exposed. Everything that they were ashamed of was displayed for everybody to see. Interesting how Jesus has compassion on these demons in this story. What do you want me to do? They respond, send us into the swine. Now, that could be a whole different story because there's Jewish people and, well, they don't deal with pigs or are not supposed to. They're not supposed to be buying or selling pigs. They're not supposed to be doing anything with pigs, but there's this market for pork among the Romans. So this is all about the Romans and about how this group is going to make money by selling products they would never use themselves to the Romans. The whole group was not behaving their best. We're doing things sometimes too where we wouldn't normally do when we're under oppression or stress. And so the swine, as soon as these forces go into them, the swine go commit suicide and they run down into the water and drown. This reminds me, well, a little bit of the story in Exodus, the liberation from Egypt, when the sea opened and some people got to go through and then it closed up and the Pharaoh's forces, as they came in, were swallowed up by the sea. Maybe a vision here in the people's minds is maybe someday the Romans will get back in the boats or whatever brought them there and go back the same way they came. So this amazing story of this one disturbed man, this naked man, well, he's now freed from Legion. He's freed from those forces that are making him believe and behave in worse ways than he normally would. And now he gets close and he's in his right mind. And he says, Jesus, I want to be with you. But Jesus responds, no, it's better for you to go back to your family and let them see what's happened. You've been restored to your family. I think there is so much going on in this story, more than we could even anticipate. You know, a lot of us, well, we were raised with the idea of salvation, and it's all about what happens when we die. You know, it's how you go to heaven after you die. But the word salvation originally derives from that Exodus story when the children of Israel were liberated and saved from slavery, from oppressive forces who abused them and who put pressures and stress on the people of Israel. They were liberated from slavery. They were set free. They were saved. And salvation means liberation. Luke and the other synoptic writers are interested in telling us the stories of Jesus as Savior, Liberator. And suddenly, well, the story gets a bit of a glow to it because we now see an individual on one level, but once those oppressive forces are removed, that person, well, we start to see that person behave in a, beautiful way, and we don't hold it against that person. He wasn't meant, and he didn't mean to be misbehaving or rude or inappropriate. There were forces pressing him down that were making a way in him. Well, we set him free, and then we see the colors shine. Listen, it's true of all of us. We know each one of us have days when something's pressing down on us, our ideas, our phobias. Somebody's just raining on our parade and we're not the best we could be. Some of us have experienced addiction. Some have had a bout with mental illness and depression. We have behaved in ways that we know are horrible, and we weren't just ourselves, our best selves. So how do we hold it against others? Underneath that crazy looking guy running around naked among the tombstones is still some beautiful person who could be restored and set free. It's true of you, it's true of me, it's true of the people who are really annoying you right now, any of us right now. It's true. The people as individuals who are bothering us. It's even true of the groups of a political party that's maybe not yours. they just get under your skin. And instead of just saying, oh, they're evil or they're wrong, maybe we need to say something's chewing at them. They too might have forces that are oppressing them. They have fears. They have people. They have political regimes. They have economic ideologies. They're under so much pressure, and we're seeing the worst of them right now. And what they need is not to be attacked and shamed and hated and blamed. Just maybe they need to be set free. When we think of Jesus, not just going into that village in that region by the sea, we can imagine Jesus coming into our town, our state, our nation, our world today. We have to imagine that some people are in need of a liberator. Jesus wants to set people free from addiction and lust and greed and pride and fear and pressure, maybe expectations and stress. He wants to set people free because we have I think locally here, we have a kind of a family dynamic here, and there are functions that affect all of us. We all need to be set free socially, set free of all the social pressures of who's in, who's out, who's being stigmatized, who's being scapegoated. We need to be free of, yes, religious pressures, because often some of the worst oppressive forces in the world are religious. National and political forces can suck the life out of us and sometimes make us, terrified. And yes, sometimes we're just not behaving our best because of the spirit of the time. There are forces now that are trying to hold us down and keep us locked in. There are global forces, economic forces. But when you hear the word spiritual, I hope you won't make it a separate category, but that you'll see spiritual forces inhabit all of those levels, from the personal to the familiar, to the social, to the national, political, and economic and global. Spiritual liberation means liberation on all of these levels, because whoever Jesus sets free will be free indeed. And the church says, Amen.